Hello and welcome. My name's Wolfgang Riebe, and these are the 4 life truths. Now, before we even begin, who am I? What's my claim to fame? Very briefly, I am an international keynote speaker. I travel around the world speaking to companies and to people and making them more positive. What I do is I shift the way they think. That's why I call myself a mind shift master. And what I want to do in these 4 lessons is shift your thinking and let you discover and understand 4 life truths out there which everyone should know, but they've misinterpreted them, hence they don't quite understand the power of these. And I'm going to get right to it. And the first life truth I want to cover in this lesson is wealth. If I were to explain to you the various definitions that you find in the dictionaries around, they're kind of similar, but they're all quite complex and difficult. Let's say 30 years ago, had you asked someone what is the definition of wealth, the majority, if not all the people, would have gone, it's financial, it's materialistic, it's how big a house I have, how big a car I have, etc., etc., etc. It was all based around things. It's interesting in my seminars today that when I pose this question, and it's even changed over the last few years, less and less people are going for the materialistic. I like challenging people's beliefs and I like getting them a bit worked up emotionally. So I always ask, do you think it's this? And normally everybody went, yeah. And I go, no, it isn't. And I start challenging them. Today, only half the people are putting their hand up. Why is that? Because the definition and the whole concept of wealth has changed. Although, if you still want a materialistic definition of wealth, today's one would be privacy. Now, why do I say privacy? Think about it. No matter how careful you've been with your mobile phone number, you still get spam SMSs. No matter how careful you've been, which site you visited on the internet, you still get junk mail. Your information is shared worldwide with everyone. True wealth today is, in essence, that no one knows who you are, where you are, what you have, what your address is, or your phone number. Very few people can say they have that. The super rich have all these important people around them, from personal assistants to security guards, that prevent anyone from getting to them. So that would be that privacy definition of wealth. However, I tend to think of life a bit differently. Life has taught me quite a few lessons. My traveling around the world has really opened my eyes. And they say that traveling is the university of life. And after 144 countries, guess what? I kind of have my own definitions. I've had an interesting life as a speaker. I'm not one of those chaps that has read an inspirational book and now regurgitates what I've read to others. I believe that as a speaker, if you want to connect with an audience, you need to be authentic and you need to speak from experience. So if I want to share my definition of wealth to you, I've got to tell it to you from my perspective that you can relate to what I'm saying, because then I start tapping into your emotions and then we start connecting. And then you have a definition which you can understand as well, if you connect to it. So let me start. How do I see wealth? There's a bigger picture. Now, I started my career many years ago as an entertainer, working on cruise ships. And I'll never forget the first cruise ship I had a contract on. I never realized at the time it was all older people working on ships. And it was pretty much like going on a floating old age home, if you ask me, all retired people. Now, if you're on a ship and you headline act, as they call it, what happens is the ship sails at night. During the day, it stops in ports. Everything is normally included in the price except the alcohol, the drinks, and the tours. Any ship that you're on, let's say there's one in the Caribbean doing from Fort Lauderdale, the trip. Before it gets to Nassau, you can buy a tour and go and do a city tour of Nassau, or you can do a submarine tour or whatever. These cost extra. When the ship docks in the morning, they have buses that take the people to these various tours. In the afternoon or the evening, the buses come back and the ship sails to the next port. Because we worked on the ship, we could go on these free of charge. But as a representative of the company, we had to make sure the tour was as advertised. Otherwise, some people like to sue and take the company to court on that. And secondly, because we had an elderly clientele, a lot of these people had Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Zimmer frames, wheelchairs. They needed somebody to make sure that everybody got together at all the refreshment stops, and also because of, the little bit not quite, we had to help them physically and all that. Right. You get the message. So, my first cruise ship back in 1990. I take it some of you that are looking at this weren't born then, so it's a while back. Few days on the cruise ship, I eventually signed up to my first tour. It was a whole day tour in the Caribbean in St. Thomas. First half of the tour was a city tour, second half was a botanical gardens. I'll never forget it. I signed up to this tour. First half, city tour. Hi-fis, computers, jewelry, clothes. I'm like, wow, eau de toilettes, awesome, loved it. All the elderly passengers were bored out of their mind. Second half of the tour, botanical gardens. Let me tell you something. All these old people were suddenly taking photos of flowers. I asked you, what were they smoking? A bloody flower. Didn't make sense to me. I was a youngster, about 26 at the time. What the heck's going on here? I didn't understand them. And I'd been on the ship like a few days already, and what I didn't get was, I don't know how many elderly people you know, but have you ever watched them? Or an example, you've been in the post office, you've waited in the queue now for 3 days, eventually you're up front, this elderly person comes, pushes you out of the way, respect, I'm older. Ever happened to you? Yeah? And you look at them and you go, what's with you? Now here I am on the ship. I was a youngster, I just started out in my entertainment career, came from London, moved onto the ships, had nothing. Here I was with all these wealthy elderly people. Life didn't make sense because they all loved flowers and they all had a long face. It was kind of weird, man. They'd like knock you over in the passageways in their wheelchairs and they'd be aggressive. It didn't make sense, and I was ever so sorry I'd actually taken a contract on a cruise liner because of this. Do you know what? It took me 3 months before I went up to an elderly gentleman. I'll never forget it. One night, there he was in front of the dining room. I'm also a bit early. I was hungry, waiting with him, and I said, I just couldn't take this anymore. And I just said to him, "Oi, what is it with you elderly people that you have such long faces? You have all this money, you have everything you want, and you love flowers. Is there something I'm missing?" Now, luckily, I wasn't that naive that I was just judgmental. I actually went so far as to ask, is there something I'm missing? And this elderly gentleman just smiled at me and he said, "I can see you stupid." And I was like about to say something. He said, "Let me tell you something. I'll tell you why I've got a long face. Because my wife died 6 months ago." And I'm like, oof, how do you answer that? And he said, "And my kids died in a car accident 2 years ago. I'm bitter at the cards that life has dealt me." And I was like, he said to me, he wishes he had spent more time in his youth with the things that were important to him, like his children and his spouse. This was a really hard lesson to learn as a youngster. And then suddenly I started speaking to every single passenger I met on the ships. And in a nutshell, there are 3 things I learned from the elderly that have stood me in good stead for the rest of my life. And these are my definition of wealth until today. And I want to share them with you. You see, most of us as younger people, and I still call myself younger, we run around. We don't know what. We just run. We have no idea. Now, here's an interesting thing that I learned from retired people. You see, retired people have now had a chance to philosophize, to meditate, to pray, to think about life. And suddenly, a lot of realizations come to light. Over 11 months on my first contract, I spoke to every single passenger I met. And I take it at 1,200 people per cruise, per 7-day cruise. That's quite a few thousand people I chatted to. And even if I missed some out, it's a lot of people. They all said the same thing to me. Number one, they said to me that they regretted having spent their whole life making money their God, so to say. Making money the priority in their life. And all they did was run after money. Because in the process of doing that, they never had time for their family and friends. Do you remember your parents saying to you, "I can't believe how quick you're growing up"? Or even worse, have you said it to your own kids? You see, the day you're older, you'll regret not having been at that sports game, not having been at that graduation ceremony. Think about that. The day you're older, do you know what memories you have? Are not the new computer you bought, the new car you bought, the new clothes you bought. The memories you have are the first steps that your child took, the first kiss you had, the first time you... Those are the memories that you have. It's the emotional memories. Think about that. What have you done in your life to create those memories? The materialistic stuff disappears. In your old age, it's those special memories that remain. The funny thing your kids said, that special time you went away on a holiday with your spouse, those are the things. The special things you said, the way you've connected, everything to do with emotions, that's the memories that stay the day you're older. Secondly, I was sarcastic earlier when I said, oh, the elderly have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Zimmer frames, wheelchairs. As a youngster back then, I never realized where they were coming from. You see, once again, the entire life, the focus was on money, was never on actually the most important asset that you have, which is your own body. They never stayed fit, healthy, went for checkups. Now, in the old age, they're sickly. We should have respected them for still wanting to fulfill their dreams in that state. Once we understood this, then we could do it. But before that, we had no idea. How many of you just run around and don't look after your most precious asset, your own body? Think about it. The day you're older, you can't get that health back. You at least want to enjoy your old age with a bit of fitness. Thirdly, and this was the point that really struck me about wealth, was that they said, now that they've lived life and they thought about their lives, they've realized the most beautiful things on earth are not man-made, but what the nature or the universe has given us for free. The more you travel around the world, or in my case, the more I've traveled, the more I've seen, it doesn't matter where you stay, in what country you stay, or where on earth you are. This earth is beautiful. We have natural scenery. We have things from flowers to waterfalls to trees. Have you just walked out and looked at the nature and gone, wow, look how beautiful this is? Even if you live in a big city, have you just gone into the park and looked at the beautiful flowers, the trees, the ponds, the rivers, the scenery, the animals, the ducks in the pond, and just literally absorbed all this beauty? It's free, doesn't cost you anything, but we forget about that. We get so caught up, and I'm going to talk about it in one of the next lessons on conditioning, about all the nonsense out there. We get brainwashed to forget that true beauty is what is for free out there, not what we have to buy with money. And once you start understanding that, life makes a difference. So as a younger person that's the whole time running around, realize my family, my friends, my co-workers, my health, and the beauty of what's out there. That's where true wealth lies. Those are the memories I'm going to have one day when I'm older. Once you understand that, guess what? You start chilling in here. And once that happens, this stuff starts coming on its own. So my first life truth for you about wealth is exactly what I've just spoken about now. That is what wealth is about. Create the awesome memories around you. Of course, money is important in today's world. Under no circumstances am I saying it isn't. But what happens is that we as human beings don't have a balance anymore. We just focus on the materialistic and we don't focus on what's known as work-life balance, on the other important things, what's really important, family, friends, health, nature around. Once you can have that balance and understand the importance of that, then this stuff starts coming much easier. I thank you very much for watching my first life truth on wealth. Speaking for me has become a calling and a passion. Hence, these lessons are free for you. Here are 4 truths. They're all about the same length as this one on wealth. And as you can see, I'm speaking from the heart and from experience. And in that way, I know it sounds corny when you say, if I can do it, you can do it too. But come on, this is a practical, realistic experience I've had, and surely you can take something home from my lesson in wealth. And I trust you're going to do the same with all my other lessons. So for now, I'd like you to think about this lesson on wealth. Maybe you can come up with something similar and ideas and experiences which put it into perspective for you. Thank you for your time, and I look very much forward to seeing you in my next life truth, which is all about passion. Until then, from me, Wolfgang Riebe, bye.